Past couple of weeks, we've been talking over a series called Manifesto and talking about, who Jesus said that he is and who we are because he's allowed us to be that, because he gave his life, because he went for us to the cross, that his spirit, the Spirit of God, could be placed inside of us so that we could be with him. We could have that same authority that he has. We've talked about the Beatitudes. We're going through some of the things on the Sermon on the Mount. And that authority has been placed in us, and he's told us, hey, blessed are the merciful, blessed are the peacemakers. These people that show these things inward of how we feel, how we react to things, how we outwardly pursue things and act when things are going on around us, and how we treat people. These are how we live. And in this Sermon on the Mount, there's many more things. I'm not going to go over every single one of them, but the main message here is that there's a pursuit of God that Jesus has called us to, that we are to be disciples of Christ. And you know what a disciple is? A disciple is a student, a learner, somebody that seeks after knowing every bit of whatever the thing is that they're studying. And I'm not the person that you would say, oh, that guy just, some people love to go to school. I did not love to go to school. But when it comes to God, I want to be the best learner. I want to be the best pupil. I want to study him, his words and his heart, his spirit, and know him more. I want to know who he is, how he acts, what he feels. That's what he's called us to. That's what Jesus has said in this Sermon on the Mount. Many of the things he says, here's how you act, here's what your action should be toward others. But the gist of really the Sermon on the Mount, many things that he spoke about, and he really wrapped it up with, but you have to seek after me. There's something about just knowing about me that doesn't get the job done, that you have to chase after me. You have to do the work. You have to put action to what you've heard. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. And to be a disciple is to be a Christian. To be a Christian is to be a disciple. Here in the Bible, that there were disciples, and then people started calling them Christians. It's not the other way around. And nowadays, there's a lot of people like, oh, I know God. I'm a Christian, but Jesus didn't call us to be just Christians. He called us to be disciples. And then people can call us Christians if they want. But a disciple is somebody who continuously seeks after, chases after, learns, grows, and does everything that they can to just pour themselves into what they are called to. And us as disciples or Christians, we're called to pursue after God, his will, his spirit, everything that he is. In Matthew 28:19, it says, go make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Go make disciples. It doesn't say go make Christians. They ended up calling disciples Christians, but it says go make disciples. So a disciple is somebody that's going to make disciples. It's like, I'm not a money person, but, a financial advisor, we have many here, so if you need to know one, just let me know. I'll point you in that direction. But it's like money. If you take it and just hold it, it's not going to do anything. But if you use it and place it in the right place, that money, as it compounds and grows, that more money can make more money. And like us, more disciples can make more disciples. It's the same kind of concept where we're supposed to be compounding. We're supposed to be making disciples, and those disciples making disciples. And speaking to other people and knowing who God is so that we can share him with other people. That's what a Christian is. That's what a disciple is. Jesus said, go make disciples. Go make people that want to seek after me and want to know me, want to learn about who I am and want to follow every little detail of the words that I've been speaking to you. That's who it is, not Christians. In the way that sometimes we think of them now, oh, there's just those people. No, disciples. Disciples are chasers after God. Well, the ones that chase after and just have to soak up every bit of knowledge that they can. And we can't ever know all of who God is. So how could we stop learning? How could we stop seeking after him? I mean, characteristics of a disciple. What are characteristics of a disciple? They love God. They love God and who he is. They love other people. Disciples are people that soak up and absorb every bit of who God is as much as they possibly can. And see, the more we absorb, the more that we can take in. We don't ever get completely filled up. We just keep taking in, and that stuff as we use it. See, you know, if you take in knowledge and you don't use it, it just becomes stale. It just sits there stagnant. And then more can't come in. You can't keep learning if you're not using, if you're not doing. Jesus says, keep learning. Keep seeking. Keep running after me. Tommy Tenney, in the book The God Chaser, says, there's something in us that makes us afraid of the commitment that comes with real intimacy with God. For one thing, intimacy with God requires purity. Intimacy with God requires a certain level of brokenness because purity comes from brokenness. It is time to lay everything aside and cover yourselves in the blood. When the Apostle Paul wrote, I die daily in 1 Corinthians 15:31, he was saying, I enter into the presence of God every day. Till we get this stage of hot chase after God, we can't really experience him. He's saying, really experiencing God. Now, as we come to know Christ, we experience him, we feel his presence, but to really experience, because we can't absorb all of him at once, we have to be in this pursuit of who he is, his knowledge and those attributes of God that we can absorb and pour out on other people, that until we come to this place of hot chase is what he says. I love he says hot chase. It's not just like, hey, God, I'm going to know a little bit about who you are. But he says, no, it's a hot chase. Like your feet are on fire because you're running so hard after God. Like you're burning up, like it's just consuming who you are. It says chasing after God. That's where we find this presence. And we are able to understand and feel more and more of who he is. If you stay in one place, if you're not chasing after God, you'll be able to know him, but not really know him and be in his presence and see so many of these different things that God has for you. And this is what Jesus is telling us in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew. In Luke 14:25 it says, now great multitudes went with him. And he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. He talks about how if a person was wanting to build a tower, would they not count the cost? Would they not make sure that they have enough money and supplies readily available so that they could finish it? Or a king that's going to war, would they not count the cost? Would they not make sure that they were ready and prepared for war to go into battle against another kingdom? Because if they weren't, they would just send out delegates to hopefully make peace. But he's saying, count the cost. Understand what it means to follow God. And when he says, you must hate your father and mother, it's not in the sense that we would understand. Sometimes we use the word hate, but this is really telling us is that to be a disciple, a Christian, you should chase after God. You should seek after him and love him so much, be so enthralled with him and who he is, that it should make it seem like you hate your parents, and your brother and your sister, and even yourself. You should be so in love with him and come after him to the point where it's almost like, we're not going to abandon our parents or our family or anything like that. It's not what he's called us to do. See, we're supposed to love one another. Love the brethren, love those outside. But he says, whenever you come to me, it should be as if nothing else matters. That your pursuit of me takes precedence over everything. Everything that you do. Everyone that you love. It doesn't mean we don't love. It just means that it's so much more for God. You know, the more you love God, the more you can love people. So if we're not seeking after God and we're loving people, it's still not going to be as much as we could if we were loving him more than anything else. Because he shows us how to love. He shows us how to treat people, how to be kind, and to help people. There were large crowds. See, these people, they weren't antagonistic to what Jesus was saying. They were following him. They wanted to see the miracles and the things that were happening with Jesus. They were following. The great multitudes, they were just following him. They're like, oh, look at Jesus. Look at who he is. But he turns around to him and he says, if you want to be my disciple, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be just following. It's going to be doing. It's going to be chasing. You don't just follow around. You see, being a disciple, being a Christian is not a spectator sport. That's what they were just spectating. They wanted to see what would happen. Jesus turned around and says, no, if you want to know me, come after me. Don't just see what's happening. Learn. Be a learner. Be a student. Soak up everything that I'm saying and put it into action. See, when you go to school to do something, whatever it is, a financial advisor or whatever you go to school to do, that knowledge will stay there for just only so long unless you use it, unless you put action to it, unless you go out there and do it. We have to be doing the word. We have to take these things in our heart and know them, but not just know them, but do them. But take action. Walk. It's like hiking. It's not spectator sport. It's not, you get out your cushion and sit on the bleachers to watch the game. I mean, there's a little bit of reward in that because, you get to cheer somebody else on, but you're not actually doing the work. So you don't actually get the reward. You just get to cheer somebody else on. And God's saying, no. He says, I want you to be the one out there in the action. I want you to do it. I want you to be the athlete or the worker. I want you to be the disciple. Don't be a spectator. Be a disciple. Matthew 7:24 says, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on the house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, and floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. He's saying there's a difference between knowing and doing. There's a difference between just knowing the things of God and actually putting them into action. Like I said, if you don't put them into action, it becomes stale. If you learn all you need to know about your profession, but you aren't actually doing it, you'll lose that knowledge. You know, I had some work done in my house. We redid our kitchen, and we put the drywall up, but I don't really know how to mud and tape. I've tried it before, and it's one of those things. It's like an art form. But I had somebody come over, this man in our church. He came over and did the mud and taping, and I know that's what he did for a profession. But when he came over, he was out there or in my house, in this kitchen, and he was just going like, it was so smooth and so just perfect. And he didn't even drip one little bit of that drywall mud on the floor. And it was like a dance. He was just dancing up there. And I thought, you know, he must think I'm just crazy because I'm just standing here like, whoa. Look at this guy. I mean, he's just going perfectly. Like, you know, I don't know if any of you guys have done drywall mud before, but you know, you put the mud on, you have to sand it off. And when I do it, you got to sand it for like 4 hours because there's so much mud on there. Because it's not my profession. It's not something I've been doing. But see, the point is that he's been doing this for 35 or so years. I mean, he's been putting the knowledge that he received and learned into action for so long that it was like second nature to him. He didn't even have to think about it. He was just going. And he wasn't just going. It was like you could have recorded it and played a movie of it, and people would be like, oh, wow. You know, it's like one of those things that, you know, it's like you look at it and you're like, how am I still stuck looking at this? Because it was so amazing. But he had been doing it for so long. See, somebody, and even him probably, when he first started, he probably knew exactly how to do everything. He retained that knowledge. But that smoothness, that ease of use and being able to do what he does so well and so perfectly the first time. See, he went like with a sander. He's like, whoosh, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm done. I was like, whoa. Like he didn't hardly have to sand the stuff because he just put it on so gently and so smoothly, and there was hardly anything there to sand off. But he'd been doing it for so long. And not only that, I'm like, listen to this. I know, this is going to blow your mind just like it blew my mind. He was doing the ceiling, putting this mud on the ceiling. And he was standing on a 5-gallon bucket. Okay? Now look at this. I'm not going to do it very well. He was standing on a 5-gallon bucket, and he had his drywall knife up there, and he was going like this, and he wasn't even looking at his feet or where he was going, and he was just shuffling his feet, and this bucket was just going scooting across the floor, and he was just like this, and then a piece would drop off, and he'd go boop and catch it in the pan. oh. But for so many years, he had been doing this over and over and over that he knew exactly what he needed to do every single time. And his feet were able to do something different while he was doing this mud. And it's the same with us. See, Jesus is trying to speak to us here. He says, it's not about just knowing how to do it, but when you put action to it, when you do it, when you be a doer of the word, whenever you take these things that I've taught you and you when you speak to people, you don't just know that you're supposed to, but when you speak to them, whenever you pray for them, whenever things happen, that all of a sudden those things become just part of who you are. You begin to know them so that you can do them so much easier. And it's like people can look at you and say, wow, how do they just do that with such ease? Go and speak to somebody or pray for them or tell them about God and Jesus and what he did for them. Oh, it's not because they just heard it. It's not because they just read it, but because they've been doing it. Because they've put action to those things that they've read and heard for so long. That's what being a disciple is. A Christian. It's the same thing. Did I already say that? I can't remember. It's the same thing. Can't remember what I said first service and second service. But they were disciples before they were Christians. They were doers of the word, and then people said, oh, look at those. Those are little Christ-like people going around being like Christ. Not because they just heard it, but because they were putting action to it, because they were doing the word of God. See, Jesus said it's like building your house on a rock or building it on sand. If you put action and do the things that you've heard and read, it's like having a firm foundation that no matter what comes along, no matter what issue, no matter what problem, it doesn't matter what comes along, but because you've been doing the word of God, because you've been doing what I've been speaking to you, that you will know who you are. You will know how to do what I've asked you to do because you've done it before. And no matter what comes along, you're standing strong. You're standing firm because you're on the rock. But you can hear as much as you want. You can hear it all day long, but if you've never done it, if you've never put action, if you've never gone and talked to anybody or shared with them or prayed with them or if you never loved anybody or brought peace, if you've never had mercy on somebody, all these things, if you've never done it, then you're like a person that builds their house on the sand. The next light rain that comes along, all of a sudden you're being washed away. You're like, I don't know what's happening. I can't catch my footing. See, I know I've felt like that before. But he says, be a doer. Be a disciple. Do the things that I've told you to do and put all your effort into it. Chase God. It's hot chase, like Tommy Tenney said. It's pursuit. It's going after him and doing the things that he's told you to do. And no matter what comes along, you will be ready for it. It can't knock you. It can't blow you off course because you're founded on the rock. Matthew 7, 13 through 14, it says, enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go in by it, because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way that leads to life. And there are few who find it. Jesus is trying to tell us something. Now, these two times it says narrow, they actually mean two different things. The first one means narrow. It means it's not easy to fit through. And the second one means it's more like tribulation or pressure or pushing. And Jesus is saying, you're trying to hit the mark, but you need to put action into what you're doing, and there's going to be pressure. There are few that find it. Now, I believe there can be many that find it if they understand what he's saying. But he's trying to tell us, he's like, it's not easy. It's not a lazy river. You ever go to the water park and you get the raft and you just plop your butt down in the river and it just takes you wherever it goes? That's not being a disciple. It's work, like I said. It's a hike. But the reward is so great. There's not much reward in just floating along in a lazy river. But when you're hiking, when you're putting action, you see the beauty of God's creation and you're growing stronger, more agile. Because you're using your body. If you just sit forever, you'd lose your muscles. If you don't have to stand up and go and work and move around, your muscles are starting to deteriorate. And that's what God's telling us here. When Jesus is speaking to us, he says, it's not about just knowing and sitting there. You can't retain the things that I've told you and not use them. You got to get up and walk them out. You got to get up and do them. You got to be a disciple. It's not easy. It takes work. Narrow is the gate that leads to life. Wide is the gate that leads to destruction. It's easy to find. It's easy to find. It's easy to walk that path. But he said, I'm telling you, if you take the time to work, to do, to chase after me, your reward will be so great. It says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. But it takes work. It's still a yoke. It's still something that we have to hold on to. He's like, come after me. Come take what I have for you. And I promise you, it will make you stronger. And I promise you, it won't be too heavy. Psalm 1, verse 1, it says, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. Wow. Those who delight in the law of the Lord, those who meditate on it day and night, those who chase after God and just are, God, I want to be in your presence. I want to seek after you. I want to know you. And as we do those things that we've learned, that we've heard, we produce fruit. Our leaves never fade. A bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree produces good fruit. A dead tree produces no fruit. There's only one of those that we should be. But if you don't put action, if we don't go and do what God has told us to do, if we don't hear his words and do them, then we'll wither away. We won't be living in his will. But he's called us to be disciples. He's called us to be Christians. Amen? Why don't you stand with me?